Okay, well, thank you very much. You mentioned a couple of things. One of them, is this working? It seems to be. If for any of you people that might like to have DVDs of this program or other programs, let us know. As Sandy, I think, just mentioned it, for the sign-up sheet back then, price is quite reasonable. There it is. Price is quite reasonable, $5, and we'll mail it out to you. We're not getting rich off that. But for a lot of people, they'd like to have something, or they want to share it with somebody, or they can't come to a meeting. But if you're interested in DVDs, then please act quickly, because if I take it out of the camera, it's more difficult for me to make it. And in the camera, it's quite easy to make it, so don't waste too much time. I guess I really should kind of apologize. I've been late getting out things like notices and advertising and putting things up in the post office. It just seems like we've had so many projects going on this spring. You know the old saying that somebody said, the further I go, the behinder I get, that's what's been happening to me. At any rate, glad you're here. And we do have some good meetings, some real good things coming up. Next August 1st, first Monday in August, August 1st, we have Randy Voss coming to talk to us about hydrofracking. And I know that you know that this is a controversial thing. Some people saying it's okay, other people saying not in my state, not in my yard, and so forth. We have Randy Voss coming to talk about this. You may want to come and talk about it, give your views. That's fine. This is something different, I guess, but something really needs to be talked about. September, not the first Monday, not Labor Day, but the second Monday, Chuck D'Imperio. We've had him before. He's a radio guy down in Oneonta. He writes books, he does things that are so entertaining and interesting, and he's got a book coming up which is going to be entitled Upstate New York, History Happens Here. You don't want to miss history. History is very important. That's coming up September 12th, so that's something of interest to you. Coming up in October, and by the way, we have a sheet with all these things on it on the table over there. Coming up, you can take one. Don't take the table, just take the paper. Coming up in October, we have Jerry Antill. If the name rings a bell, he writes novels. But what's interesting to us is that he takes people, real people like you guys, and puts them into his books. Now, he gets permission, but who knows what he's going to say about you. So you really should come and check this guy out. I don't know. It should be really interesting. October 3rd, first Monday in October. Has anybody here been part of the Jerry Antill book? Not sure. I think Jimmy Conway was in one. November, we have Pam Pullen coming, and she is going to tell us about Matilda Jocelyn Gage. She'll be in costume and telling us the story about this life, and so this should be interesting for you. So you want to, pick up one of these, go home, put it on your calendars. That'd be really great thing. Well, tonight we have speakers from Groton, Rosemarie Tucker, April Sheffler coming to talk to us about Verne Morton. And this, I think Lily raised this. This was something we need to have as a guy who took a whole lot of pictures a long time ago, and very important pictures. The topic is making the commonplace compelling. And we're so glad that somebody years ago took pictures and froze a little history for us to look at a century or so later. We have a picture of my grandmother, probably dating back to the 1890s. She and her family are standing outside by a table. They're taking a picture of the sunlight because the cameras weren't very good back then. And I took my Photoshop program and I lightened this thing up. And then you could see a lot of people, probably neighbors, on the porch behind them. And you, what are they doing? Well, we were speculating that maybe they found taking pictures very exciting. Back then, it was also very difficult, and you're probably going to talk about that. So, ladies, this is 1, 2, this is for you.
During the late 1800s and early 1900s, almost every community had a photographer documenting life whose work may be sitting forgotten in someone's attic. Photographs were produced from fragile glass plate negatives and unstable nitrate negatives, which put their continued viability in question if not cared for properly. Our goal is to not only focus on what we can learn from the photographs, but also to advocate how important it is to locate, preserve, share, and enjoy them. The work of local folk artists and local folk photographers in particular is invaluable to local histories of every community. Their work documents how people lived, worked, and played, the building of houses, factories, and roads, the horse being replaced by the car, the advent of electricity and the telephone. All of the pronouns and adjectives used to describe these events in an essay are inadequate when compared to the visual impact of seeing real people and real scenes from that long ago time. For local history, this is especially true because in many cases we are seeing members of our own families traveling the same roads, passing by the same buildings, and walking exactly where they walk. We would like to introduce you to Verne Morton, a photographer from Groton, who saw the natural beauty and grace that was right outside our doors, and through his photographs made the commonplace compelling. Morton kept meticulous records pertaining to his photos, and the captions included here are his as well as the year taken and the record number. Captions you see on the screen. Verne Morton was born in October 1868, right in Tompkins County, just 2 miles northeast of the village of Groton. He was the oldest of 4 children of Porter and Dorothy Jane Smith Morton. In the 5th generation of the Morton family, born in the house on Old Stage Road in Groton, Verne had 1 sister and 2 brothers, Ray and Neil. Since none of the 4 Morton children are married, there are no direct line descendants. The property was purchased by David Morton Sr. in 1805. Verne and his brother Neil lived out their lives in the house and remained in the family until their death. If you drive down Old Stage Road today, you will see the former Morton home with the exterior still looking as much as it does in this picture. Being a child small in stature and rather frail, Verne was not suited for farm labor, so turned his attention to education. After graduating from the Groton Union School on June 24, 1887, he taught for many years at one-room district schools in Locke, Groton, Lansing, and Dryden. It has been said that he was a soft-spoken man and very understanding of the shy students at the school. Although records do not exist as to when he became interested in photography or when he purchased his first camera, it is suggested that his photographic career began about 1896. Until his death in 1945, he took more than 12,000 photographs of Groton and surrounding communities, as well as his travels to the Adirondacks, New Hampshire, Pennsylvania, Washington, D.C., and Canada. An admirer of the noted naturalist and author John Burroughs, Morton was self-taught in botany and natural history. He collected, identified, labeled, and pressed specimens of flowers and ferns. Many of his photographs are of botanical specimens in their natural surroundings. Morton's attention to detail made his botanical photographs much sought after and were used to illustrate many publications and bulletins published by Cornell College of Agriculture. It is not only the beautiful and artistic composition that draws us to Morton's photographs, it is also the visual story and documentation of life gone by that makes his work historical treasure.
During Morton's lifetime, agriculture was a major source of income for his friends and family, and most of his photographs reflect life and work on the farm. The fact that the Cummings family chose to be photographed in front of their barns and with their horse rather than in front of their home may be testimony to the importance that they gave to their way of life. Morton's photographs were so prolific that we often put them together to form a series, such as the process of raising hay from planting to harvest. The upper picture of Rosemarie plowing gives us a sense of the vastness of the field that he and his team are working. One wonders, how many times will they travel back and forth with their one-bottom plow? The glowering sky adds dimension. You can almost feel the electricity in the air, hear the rumble of the distant thunder, and feel the need to accomplish as much as possible before the rain comes down in torrents. In contrast, rolling furrows on a sunny spring day, with your straw hat for shade and two fancy horses pulling you around, looks like a really fine place to be. Making hay while the sun shines. Making hay while the sun shines has real meaning when talking about hay, even today. Sun is needed to dry hay properly so that it doesn't mold in the haymow, spoiling it for feed and creating enough heat to cause a fire. Too much drying will destroy nutrients. Making hay by hand was always a race against time to get the hay in the barn as soon as the dew dried and before dust dampens the hay again. Envision hour after hour of pitching a seemingly endless field of hay into the wagon. The sweltering heat, the relentless sun, and probably lots of pesky insects buzzing around your head. Then hauling the wagon home and pitching the same hay again, either into the barn or a stack. Notice that no one is wearing work clothes. Pity the person who went to the field to do work without the calluses of work-hardened hands. Notice also that the horse in the bottom picture is wearing what looks like long strings attached to his harness. These would move around slightly, keeping some of the flies and insects from torturing the animals.
Will you excuse me, could I beg that you hold the mic a little closer? Not all of us hear really well.
Okay, sorry.
You're competing with the fan, so.
Oh, okay. This is better?
Yeah.
Okay. When you could no longer reach the top of the stack with a ladder, a series of pulleys and ropes were rigged to haul the hay to the man at the top after the person in the wagon loaded a large, specially constructed hay fork. After passing through the pulleys, the rope would be hitched to a pair of horses, similar to the ones at the hands of Mrs. Graves in the lower picture, thus providing power to raise the heavy hay fork to the top of the stack. Sometimes the best of the crop wasn't fed to the animals or used for human consumption, but carefully picked, dried, and preserved as seed for the next year. One wonders how many autumns Porter Morton spent grading seed corn to ensure the survival of his family. There were no super hybrids and no genetic engineering, but the corn and potatoes depicted in these photos would rival any produced today. It is said that a man could dig 1/8 to 3/8 of an acre of potatoes a day. Imagine how your back would ache after a day spent digging and grading potatoes. Then imagine thinking about having to do it again the next day. You can see, though, that Mr. Brown is pretty proud of his crop and will no doubt enjoy these potatoes all through the long winter. Neil Morton managed the farm after the death of his parents and had a fondness and a talent for things mechanical. Although they never put electricity into the old home, Neil once built a small generator for the hen house that ran lights controlled by an 8-day clock to entice the hens to lay more eggs. Gradually, as farming started to become more than just being self-sufficient, farm products were transported to the growing populations in villages and cities. Do you see that there is no seat on this wagon and the man is actually sitting on a crate of eggs? Also, Notice the iron wheels and the rough dirt road. No rubber tires, air ride suspension, or smooth pavement here. We cannot help but wonder how many eggs were broken when they reached their destination. Apples were a popular crop in this area of the Finger Lakes region. I have journals that belonged to my great-grandfather, and for weeks, day after day, the one-line entries would be picked apples, and sometimes hauled apples to Moravia. This picture brings those journal entries to life for me, as I see the pile of apples being sorted and barreled, the empty baskets ready to be filled again, and the stack of barrels waiting to be loaded into a wagon to be hauled to places like Moravia, Auburn, Lansing, or Ithaca. Although men did the majority of the farm work, the women did their share as well, and children were also expected to help. Since there were no chemical weed killers, weeding and tilling was done by hand using a hoe. Wide-brimmed hats and long sleeves and skirts protected people from the sun. However, we should keep in mind that Morton posed most of his photos, and we really don't think that a lady usually wore her crisp, bright white blouse while mowing the cornfield. Feeding and caring for chickens, ducks, and geese, as well as the collection of eggs, were typical chores that the children were expected to do. Fowl were valuable assets to the farmer, providing eggs and meat. Additionally, ducks and geese provided down for pillows, mattresses, and quilts. The birds also ate undesirable insects and slugs in the gardens, long before insecticides were invented. Being poor flyers, chickens, ducks, and geese often fell prey to wild animals such as coyotes, foxes, and owls, and part of this little girl's job was probably to round the flock up every evening and get them safely into the barn or a coop. Beekeeping and honey production were important elements of farm life. In this photo, you can see the apple orchard in the background. With a bee yard nearby, good pollination was assured, resulting in better crop yields. Honey was used as a sweetener and an alternative to buying cane sugar at the store. The beekeeper and his sons were dressed in their Sunday best for this photograph. Mr. Codshell, a Groton resident and entrepreneur, may have planned to use this photo to advertise his beekeeping business, which extended from New York State to Colorado, Mexico, and Cuba. Towards the end of winter and before spring planting, there was maple syrup and sugar to be made. Maple trees were tapped and the sap collected in buckets, then dumped into large barrels to be hauled to the place where it was boiled down to make the delicious maple syrup. It took about 40 gallons of sap to produce 1 gallon of syrup over an open fire. Observe that the conveyance is constructed from 2 bobsleds, saplings, and boards. The runners were needed to get over the snow-covered land, but they also went through the woods easier than wheels on days when frozen ground turned to mud. Washing the sap buckets was a big chore, and from this photo you can see that the process of maple sugaring, as with other farm chores, was a family affair with the children taking part in the work. After the sap was boiled down to syrup outside, it was taken into the house and boiled even further until it formed maple sugar when poured into forms and cooled. Although the children were expected to help with the chores, they were also still children, and sometimes couldn't resist a taste of the sweet sap as it dripped from the trees. A special treat was called a sugar eat, or sometimes sugar on snow, which was made by drizzling superheated maple syrup over snow, resulting in a chewy, taffy-like confection. When there wasn't farm work to be done, there was wood to be cut. It would have taken quite a while for the man with the axe to trim all the limbs from this tree. Once the upper branches were removed, he would begin chopping off the branches that still held the tree up in the air. This was very dangerous work because the sudden release of tension on a branch could cause the tree to suddenly fall or roll, hitting the man or pinning him underneath. Photography in Verne Morton's day required that subjects remain still during the long exposure times. He probably was not very happy with the movement of the horses that resulted in this slightly blurred picture. However, for us, as observers from another time, this photograph illustrates the power of these two horses as they struggle to get a very heavy log under motion. Even though we can see that the man is attempting with all his might to hold the horses in place, the horses seem to know that there is work to be done. There's an old saying that wood warms you once, wood warms you twice. Once when you make it, once when you burn it. The upper photo here lends credence to that saying. These men will certainly be warmed from their work by the time the huge pile of limb wood is buzzed and stacked in the woodshed, then later burnt in their stoves to keep them warm during the winter. The arrival of the mailman was a welcome event at a lonely country farm, bringing letters, newspapers, and catalogs. It is interesting to note in the upper picture that Morton did some careful retouching of the glass plate negative. He sketched in some wispy clouds and added some highlights on the horse's stomach, legs, and face. Morton was known for being meticulous and fussy and sometimes spent hours setting up a photo and waiting for the perfect lighting. These small touch-ups show that for all his careful planning, he was sometimes still not satisfied with the results. Wouldn't he have loved Photoshop? Verne Morton was teaching in Dryden in 1899 and wrote to his brother Neil on April 15th. The walking was very bad last Sunday, and on Monday the roads were worse than ever. I have been wearing rubber boots all the week to and from school, leaving my shoes at the schoolhouse all the time. Local farmers were appointed as road commissioners to attend to the upkeep of the roads near their properties. Here several farmers have put their teams together and are using a road scraper to even up the ruts and holes. The fact that they needed 6 horses for the job indicates how hard it was to pull the scraper. Steam engines gradually replaced horses for the maintenance of the roads, and the addition of the road roller was a big improvement to the process. These steam-powered machines were both manufactured in Groton, probably by the Conger Manufacturing Company, which later became the Monarch Road Roller Company.
The country folks left the farm from time to time, visiting the local villages to buy needed supplies and to sell some of their farm-raised produce such as vegetables, butter, maple syrup, and honey. Going to town was a big event in those days, prompted by necessity rather than fun or simple boredom. In the winter, the family bundled up in blankets for the sleigh or bobsled ride. Then the patiently waiting horse got to use one of the blankets while the people were doing their shopping, visiting friends, or getting a special treat at the candy store. The big trees along Main Street are long gone, and many of the wood-constructed buildings are lost to fires over the years and have been replaced by newer structures. Notice the sidewalk across the dirt street, creating a solid place to walk when rain turned the street into deep mud. Deja and Wilcox's Coal and Lumber Yard were dealers in Lehigh Valley coal, lumber, shingles, plaster, cement, bricks, and other building supplies. A business that has stood the test of time, it is today known as Baker Miller Lumber Company. The scene looks much the same as it did in 1914, except that instead of the horses and wagons, we see pickup trucks and minivans out front and a skid steer out in the other. The railroad track went right by the lumber yard, where the train stopped to pick up loads of lumber. This winter scene of the village of Groton shows it surrounded by barren hills. Many acres of land were cleared of virgin forest to make way for agriculture and the lucrative lumber trade, prompted by the ease of transporting lumber by train to encourage continued deforestation. Today, most of the hills surrounding Groton have reverted to woodland. The train, however, opened up a new era for small rural communities, bringing goods from the outside world and providing the opportunity to export local products. Farmers began to raise more produce to sell and became prosperous, as did many local businesses and manufacturing companies. The train also provided an opportunity for travel to surrounding communities or across the country. There were many kinds of jobs for people who lived in the villages. One which was considered acceptable employment for women was the operation of telephone switchboards. It appears that this switchboard is set up for Mrs. Beach's home. The local telephone system was composed of party lines, and when people were talking, everyone else, as well as the operator, was able to listen in, and often did. If you wanted to find out the latest news and gossip, the telephone operator was the person in the know. A master carpenter like Dennis Kelly was an important part of every community, especially when a unique piece of furniture was desired. The quality of these pieces is unrivaled, and this beautiful desk is still in existence today, handed down from generation to generation as a treasured heirloom. The doctor was an essential part of the community, caring for the sick, setting broken bones, and birthing babies, both for the people in the village and at remote homesteads. By 1913, Dr. Gilchrist had purchased one of the town's first automobiles. The advent of the telephone and the automobile made for a much quicker response to medical emergencies in secluded country areas. Children at school and at play were another of Verne Morton's favorite subjects. The upper vote here may have been one of the schools where Verne Morton taught. 1- and 2-room schoolhouses were the backbone of early American education, and 21 of these rural schools still remain in the town of Groton in 1930. Plots of land for the schools were usually donated by local farmers, and firewood for the stoves provided by the parents of the school children. The round oak stove was placed in the middle of the room with desks arranged so that everyone would get some of the heat. Even so, the people sitting closest to the stove were usually much too warm, and those sitting furthest away were often chilly. Reading in front of the class under the watchful eye of the teacher was part of the education process. The barefoot boy has a bouquet of lilacs beside him, indicating mid-May, a time when most of us today would find it too cold to go barefoot. The blackboards in these scenes were simply white boards painted black. The one at Greek school has the alphabet and a poem at the top. In the upper left-hand corner of the blackboard is a list of students' names with stars after them. One wonders what the stars represent. Attendance perhaps, or good behavior, or something else, and why Dorothy and Bessie have no stars after their names. Recess was the time to get some air and play a game like drop the handkerchief, squat tag, or pull away. Simple pleasures that have been forgotten by today's children with their video games. The children often planted gardens in the schoolyard. Work and agricultural skills were considered part of an education. This also provided lessons in biology as well as vegetables that could be utilized by the school. This group of boys playing hide and seek among the large trees on Dryden's Main Street brings a smile to my face, and I can almost imagine hearing their laughter and catcalls as they run off to their next hiding place. And little John Brat's face literally glows with happiness and pride in his bicycle. Observe his knee-length outfit, stockings, and high-button shoes. You think it was his birthday? A tea party was a great way to spend an afternoon with a friend. The miniature tea sets were made of china and were just the right size for little hands. We wouldn't think of giving children real china today. After the tea party, the girls took the dog for a ride. It looks like he has done this many times before and enjoys it as much as the girls do. These pictures of Floyd Graves and his pet crows are both endearing and whimsical. One marvels at the patience and gentleness that the young boy must have had to earn the trust of these wild crows. What could be more wonderful than a lazy afternoon, a babbling brook, a barefoot boy, and a fishing pole? Is there any place on earth any closer to paradise than this?
Light, rather than color, was one of the most important elements of Morton's photographs. His creative use of light and shadow transforms mere photographs into works of art. This scene of a cutter traveling east on Old Stage Road is a perfect balance of light and shadow, brilliant snow and dark trees, glistening frosted branches, and snow fir rows. It is a time gone by, but it is a beauty that will last forever. So too, the storybook radiance of this summer day invites you into its secret place, the sun flashing from the leaves to the reflections in the water and creating a halo around the young woman in the canoe. Most people would not have noticed the reflections in this pool, but the fine-tuned eye of the artist in Morton saw them, and his skill in the use of light allowed him to capture this perfect mirror image. This glorious riot of apple blossoms stimulates the senses. One can almost smell their sweet perfume, hear the buzzing of the bees, and feel the warm sunshine on winter-pale skin. A small girl, a large, faithful dog, and a dark forest creates a captivating combination. It appears that the dog understands just as well as the girl the importance of sitting very still for Verne Morton. This portrait could easily rival the Mona Lisa. Typical of so many of Verne Morton's photographs, this image calls you back again and again, drawing you into its depths. Somehow, Mrs. McLean reaches out to us, whispering of the mysteries within her soul, and we leave her side feeling that we know her in some mystical way. Rose Howe appears in many of Morton's photographs from the time she was a young child. She has been described as having a natural, grave expression that photographers of the time period preferred. She was also able to patiently hold a pose for a long time for the perfectionist Morton. Pictured here among the goldenrod, an ordinary roadside weed, Verne Morton weaves his magic and creates another photograph that makes the commonplace compelling. Verne Morton was an exceptional photographer whose artistic renditions are a local treasure. You may not have had a photographer in your community who was as artistic or prolific, but most assuredly there was a photographer capturing the life of common people in common places, creating a compelling glimpse into your own history. These photographs are valuable resources that, when found, must be kept, preserved, and shared for generations to come. Thank you.
Are you open for questions?
We are open for questions and hoping for the answers.
She has all the answers.
Oh, Rosie, you find them.
Let me start out. I made the statement it was difficult taking pictures, but tell me, how difficult was it back then to take pictures? And these pictures look so sharp. Was his camera really, really a good camera?
Recently, they started reproducing these pictures digitally from the original glass plate negative. And the clarity is absolutely amazing. Some of the pictures are like, they're huge. They've blown them up, and it seems the bigger they get, the better they get. It's really amazing. We brought two different books with us. The smaller one is an older book, first book of the Verne Morton collection. And the black book is a book that was printed last year, the year before. And these are the digitally produced prints, and you can see the difference in them. For instance, if you recall the cutter in the snow going down the old stage road, the earlier copy of it, you see no detail on the back of the cutter, where the robe is over the back of it. On the newer reproduction, you can see all the designs in the robe. It's just amazing. And these are all on display at Dryden Mutual Insurance Company in Dryden. If you ever get to Dryden, stop in and look at it because they are absolutely gorgeous. Those sets are all big. Yeah, they're huge.
How did the pictures come to be preserved?
I think some family members discovered that they had them there in these dilapidated cardboard boxes full of dust, droppings, and you never know what all dirt. And they knew that they had to be retained and reserved, and so they donated them to the History Center in Tompkins County, down in Ithaca. And they have the means and the way of cleaning them up, and they have taken great pride in them, and people get certain prints from them, different sizes. You get a 5x7 or 8x10 or whatever size. There's a charge to it. I haven't even seen them all. I mean, I went through one day just going through some boxes to see what's there. So I was looking for a particular one that I knew that Verne Morton had done. And I must have gone through 20 boxes. And I thought, oh, I got time for this. I'll come back another day. Didn't find the one I wanted. And the camera that you saw in the picture earlier, the camera with the owl on top, it's in the books as well. That was Verne Morton's camera. The pull-out bellows. Lost the word there.
I noticed, now it must have been a challenge to date these. I mean,
No,
unless it was marked on each
Actually,
one.
the pictures are marked. The number he uses, there'd be an
Oh.
egg, and I don't know what that, then he'd have the year, and that's the number he would use. So that's how we knew. And the little captions, few word captions that was there, was his captions on the photograph. So we have to research to find out more about a particular place or a particular person.
He also kept meticulous records, and he has notebooks, and he has everyone who listed and where they were taken and the date taken.
And those were at the History Center in Tompkins County as well.
The years seem to, I mean, there were many from 1907 in particular, but it seemed to span from like 1903 to, well, there was something past 1913. But that's not a lifetime.
No.
What happened to it?
Well, the other ones, these we got because they were published in these two books, or there's some photographs that I found since, and there have been some of the notebooks over there. I'm sure that he was taking photographs up until he died in 1945. But we just haven't, like I said, it's over 12,000. They seem to want to print in the books the older ones, I think, because of what they tell you in the story of what was going on in the farms and in the households and things like that. We started in 1896, and I didn't see too many, but they're probably there. I would like to see some of them from like the 40s, see what they show. Maybe next time.
Well, I think a lot of places do have glass plate negatives, but I don't think everybody kept track, you know, the kind of documentation he did. You know, we've got in our area some glass plate negatives, but some of them are blurry, and, you know, we have to do the research to try to figure out what the building is in the back, to try to figure out who maybe that person was, because
Right.
there is no record.
Yeah, and he always put the person's name on it.
So that's what I think is
First
kind
name,
of
initial, then we go
unusual.
back to the census records, okay, this is where this person lived, they were right next door to him, or down the road a little
Right.
bit. But it's interesting to me that he traveled to the Adirondacks, he traveled all over for these pictures. I'm sure there's some from other states that we haven't shown, they come across them, it'd be nice to see those as well.
To do an Adirondack program.
There you go. I'd love to go there.
These books are available now in the library system, that we got from
Yes.
the library system.
Yes, they are.
Is the
Down first.
old one out of print though? Is the old one still available too?
That is still available at the History Center in Tompkins County. I'm not sure how much it is, but yes, it is. And the other one, they have the other one that you can buy as well. I think the small one might be, I don't know, $35 or $40, and the larger one is $59 something. Gorgeous. And some of the pictures are the same in each one, so then you can compare to see the quality.
Oh.
Now, before he died, he could have bought film from George Eastman. And he stopped taking glass negatives and bought
I
film.
think he likes the good old days. Or maybe George Eastman charged him too much. He had his own method of it figured out. Yes.
Did he make a living at this?
Yes, he did. As we mentioned, some of the plant materials and things were used in Cornell Cooperative Extension bulletins and things, which cooperative extension agents around the counties would use those bulletins to train the farmers and the housewives and all that. So I'm sure he sold them. I'd love to go back and find one of those bulletins. I think if I get in Man Library at Cornell Ag School, I can probably find some. I don't know. Okay, there it is. It's real.
Where
The
else?
library will have them all.
Yeah.
Where else did he sell? Do you know?
I don't know. I've seen a lot of things in newspapers all the way down to Ulster County. I don't know that he sold them, but he probably, they had to get permission from him. Some of the maple sugaring especially, I've seen down Ulster County in their own newspapers.
Did he keep records of his sales, do you know?
I have no idea. We haven't unearthed anything like that yet.
Yeah.
But you never know what may show up in somebody's shattered barn or something.
Yeah. Well, but there were no, the business part of it.
No,
wasn't-
we don't
didn't
have
come
anything,
with
we
the-
haven't found anything yet.
Okay.
They're still distant cousins, you know. He didn't have any direct descendants, and neither did his brother. But there's cousins from, like, his mother's brother and
Yeah,
down
yeah.
that way. They're still around the Groton area. So every once in a while they'll share something, but we haven't found some of those things. There's more pictures, more photographs.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Well, I just think it's great. It sounds like you guys have done so much extra research too. You know, like the commentary is, you know, giving a flavor of what it was like, you know.
It's nice to, as a town historian for Groton, it's nice to have a town clerk who also enjoys history as much as I do. We make a good team.
Super.
Thank you so much for coming, and when I see these pictures, I just say, I'm glad somebody took that. Somebody froze that moment for us to look at again, and,
And they can be in your community, even though it says Groton, they can be
That's
out
right.
here, you can visualize it.
yeah. So, thank you so much. We've got some great refreshments, back here. Sandy and Irene are always fixing something, so hang around, talk to your friends, have something, thanks again.
I spent about an hour.